Hi, I'm Ayse Hogan. It's the Chakra House of Healing, and again, we're having a wonderful new episode of Talk That Talk with Tariq Sattaur. Today, we're going to be talking about age regression and progression, why we do it, and what we find out when we do. You ready?
I am.
Okay.
So, age regression. Let's start there.
Okay.
I think most people are familiar with the idea of age regression. And
No,
why?
I don't think that they're not. I don't think that they are.
We kind of have a sense that, in our past, there are things that have happened there, and we know that we can go back and explore our pasts to see what's there. Age regression, that's the purpose of age regression.
Or they've blocked it.
Right. So there was this whole idea of repressed memories that was really popular in pop psychology back in the 70s and 80s, and there was this big rush of people who seemed to have discovered that they had repressed childhood abuse. And
Right.
Unfortunately, what we discovered was a lot of those memories were false memories that were created based on the interaction between the client and whoever their therapist was
Right.
at that time. So when you're doing something that's like age regression, where you're in a very sensitive space and you're kind of vulnerable, you have to be very careful what you say. And so when you're working with the regressionist would typically avoid leading questions.
Yeah, no, so like when I do it, I'm like, what are you seeing?
Right.
How old are you?
Exactly.
What's happening?
Right. And you let the client feed you the information,
Right.
and then you just take it back to them. And so why do we do age regression? Well, oftentimes in our childhood, we make decisions, to do certain things or not do certain things, to feel a certain way or whatever. And when we speak with our clients and we make a suggestion that, you want to consider this alternative, or you might want to consider doing something differently in this way, that's all well and good. But if you haven't addressed the concerns that were in play when that individual made the decision the first time around, then you may not be as successful in changing that behavioral pattern or emotional pattern.
Right.
So regression helps us to go back into that initial event to uncover the force that was behind the decision that we made and change it.
Now, what I did was, which is probably speaking to what you're just saying now, like I just did, just recently I did an age regression, which
Okay.
actually was like way more powerful than I thought it was going to be with
Okay.
this particular client. And then I brought them, I sort of took a book from your generational playbook.
Right.
And I brought them forward into the present.
Right.
Spoke to them while they were still in trance.
Right.
About how they're now going to go back with the mind that they have now.
Right.
And deal with that situation as they thought they should have or couldn't have, but now they can.
Right.
At that time.
Right.
So she went back with her adult mind.
Right.
And said the things that she needed to say.
Mm-hmm.
To help her deal with that situation. And it was just that, it was actually fantastic. Like
Absolutely.
It was just like the healing power was so amazing. She felt so good when she came out of trance that it was just like, I was just like, yeah, you did a good job. Like she did such a great job.
Well, you know how sometimes, when we have an argument with someone and then let's say you leave their house and you're driving away and you're like, I should have said that. When they said this, we have these unfinished dialogues in our head where you think I should have said this, or this is what I wanted to say, but
Right.
you never actually got a chance
Right.
to say it. And regression gives you an opportunity to kind of finish off those pieces where you never got to express yourself in the way you would have liked to. I think at this point, I'd like to point out, we look back at our histories, we look back at our childhood with our current mindset, and we think, I should have known better.
But don't forget, and this is what I think is really, really funny about, what is really puzzling to people when it comes to regression, is that we saw those things happen with a child's mind.
Exactly.
And then we come forward and we're still remembering it with that child's mind.
Right.
Where if we had been back there with the adult mind, we might have interpreted that whole situation in a completely different manner.
Absolutely. But not only are we remembering it with that same kind of mindset, we are then criticizing it with the current mindset.
Right.
As if we know, or if we knew then what we now know. And obviously that's not the case.
That's right.
I'd often say to clients that if you look back into your history, even if it's last week, and you judge yourself for something you've done, that's not fair. You can't do that. If you were to see someone walking on the street and, clearly, let's say they're dressed inappropriately or whatever, and we often do what we can to avoid judging other people.
Right.
Yet we have no qualms in judging ourselves. But if you think about it, that person, even last week, is not you. So you really have no right to judge that person because
Right.
they didn't know what you now know. In effect, you are judging someone else, not yourself.
Right.
So we have this judgment that makes us think, I should have, and that's not the case. There is no should.
But that's all part of ego as well.
Absolutely it is. Going back into the past with the current mindset is a better approach. You know, there is no judgment. We're going back and we're observing things as they were. We're taking the knowledge and the experience we've cultivated in our lives since then, and we're using that to change our interpretation or understanding of the situation and to change the decision at the moment when it was initially made. When we do that, oftentimes the change becomes permanent.
You know what else I found is that sometimes when we're in childhood and there's a lot going on, like let's say there's an abusive father and then there's like, a different mother, or, there's been some divorces or whatever, and now there's a new couple and the child's been brought into this, and there's just so much dysfunction going on. And the child needs to find someone to blame.
Yes.
For everything that's going on. And it's so funny how sometimes they blame the completely wrong person because the person closest to them that's actually causing all the dysfunction, they can't bring themselves to say it's their fault. So they blame someone else who is actually going through that dysfunction with them. And when you take them back into the regression and they see the situation for what it is and what that other person actually went through,
Right.
they're like, wow, my whole life I've been angry with the wrong person.
Absolutely. And I think that's part and parcel because we do not have the same critical or logical faculties as children that we have as adults. We don't develop that ability to be critical or logical until later on in life. In fact, in the first 3 to 4 years of your life, you don't have a critical faculty. You're just a sponge absorbing things from the environment, without a filter.
Right.
Now, we may have talked about this before, but in that same period of your life, between 0 and 4 years old, you're also egocentric. So that means you understand the world around you as being an extension of the self. So in other words, things happen around you because of you.
Right,
you are
so
the
everything
cause
is
of things.
about me.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's not, it's just
They
how
don't
it
think
is.
of it that way. They
Right.
just, it is that way, right?
It's just their experience. Now, if you are, observing your parents are fighting or whatever, and you don't have the ability to rationally say, okay, well, these are adults, they're having a problem, you need to blame someone, but you cannot separate the self from the situation. The blame tends to come towards the self.
You blame yourself for why they're arguing.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so you internalize it. After 4 or 5 years old, we start to then recognize separation, but we still don't have a strongly developed logical faculty. So that's where we could start to project the blame on, other people or situations that seem to, somehow connect to what we're experiencing.
And I still think we place blame on the safe,
Absolutely.
on the safe person, not
Absolutely.
the one who's sometimes really at fault.
Maybe it's because
It could be like a stepmother when it was really your dad
Right.
that caused the problem,
But we
right?
don't
But
wanna
you don't
blame our
want to blame
dads.
you don't want to blame your dad, so you're blaming your stepmom.
Right, and it's
Right?
easy to do that, right? Because you can just put blame there and you can still feel the love of your father without having to deal with any of the, unpleasant things that he may have done in your life.
Right.
Now, that's a simple way for us to kind of recognize the importance of doing something like going back into the past, age regression. But why would we do progression?
So let's talk about progression in just a second. We need to go for a Zen break.
Hi everyone, my name is Tariq. I'm a certified yoga instructor and as well as a hypnotist and an NLP practitioner. I'm here today to talk to you about breath. As a yoga instructor, I am very passionate about breathing, and as all of my students in my class, I focus on that. As we get older, we start to breathe up here from our chest, and it's very important that we actually get our breath all the way down into our belly to allow our breath to be spread throughout our whole entire body. So maybe take 1 minute during the day, just 1 minute during the day to focus on your breath, and it will definitely enhance your overall health and well-being. If you want to contact me, you can contact me at tree@healthlocal.ca, or you can just find anything health related at healthlocal.ca. Thanks for watching.
Okay, welcome back. Now progression.
Okay.
Why do we want to do age progression?
So there's a kind of a technical term that we use in hypnosis. It's called future pacing. In other words, we're taking something that we have in the current moment and we're putting it out into the future. So that's progression.
Right.
Think of it this way. If you were to go to, let's say, I don't know, the subway station or,
Right.
or the train station, and you say, "I'd like a ticket, please," they'll say, "Well, where do you want to go?" You have to tell them, you have to give them a destination. Progression is a way of creating the destination in your future. It's a way of taking what you have now discovered in your life and putting it into some image in the future where you're going to go and create the self as you want it to be. So if you want to lose some weight or live more healthily, you take all of the knowledge and experience you've gained from what you're doing now, you project it into the future, and you create this goal image
So
of
it's
the
like
ideal self.
thinking of from the end.
Absolutely.
Sort of, but a bigger version of that.
Absolutely. It's more than thinking, though. And that's the great thing with
creating.
hypnosis.
It's creating from the end.
Right. It's feeling it as well, too. It's more than just the thoughts. It's how we relate emotionally to this thing that we're creating. It is a part of us. It is an extension of us. And it's something that we know because we are creating it. And so we are now able to manipulate it in whatever way we want to. It's our own creation that we can change in whatever way we desire.
Okay, so we create a future
Right.
based on the things that we're working on right now. But also, now in one of the classes that I took with you, we did a future progression.
Future life progression.
And we did a future life progression where we went ahead 250 years
Right.
and then we went ahead 500 years.
Right.
The scary part about it was we'd all seen pretty much the same thing.
Right. And we don't tell each other what we're seeing, right?
Right.
And I often find that in my past life regression classes, I end with the future life progression. I don't tell the students, what previous students have talked about. And quite often, it's very similar, if in some cases, not exactly the same thing. Now, we have this idea of karma. We go back and we look at our past lives and we see what we've done and who we've killed and whatever else to
Right.
kind of figure out, what's affecting us in this life. But karma doesn't stop here.
No.
So if we can go forward and see how we have become and who we are and understand how we have evolved karmically, it gives us insight into the things we are working on in this life that would help us get into that future situation
Right.
exactly the same way. So again, it's kind of like bookending, okay, we know we did this in the past and we've resolved it now here, but where are we going from here? So we go out into the future to recognize what's
Right.
happening there, and that way it kind of creates a much more clearly defined picture of who and how and what we are in this life at this time. It may even be a way of recognizing some karmic patterns that you haven't started working on yet, but that you
need to work on.
Exactly.
Also, things that to make sure to assure yourself that you're on the right path,
Absolutely.
or maybe you're on the wrong path,
Absolutely.
and that will become evident as well.
Yes. And the interesting thing, and I'm not going to talk about what people actually see, but the interesting thing is we see changes happening not only at the level of the individual, but at the level of society and globally as well at the same time. And the one thing that almost all the students and the people I've done future life progression come back saying is that they have come to know, to recognize at a deep level that their unique individual healing is a part of the healing of the whole.
Right.
So of their culture, of their community, and eventually of the planet in of itself.
So which is fantastic, because we all sit here and say, who am I in the scheme of things, and why am I here, and what difference would it make if I was here or I wasn't here?
Right.
So it's kind of neat in that way, where it sort of says, there is a purpose for you to be here, and you're not just
Absolutely.
here for some like abstract, somebody kind of threw you into the picture reason. Like, there is a reason for you to be here.
Right.
And you need to just recognize that reason, or maybe find out what it is and just head into that path.
Absolutely. And when you're doing things like age regression or even age progression, you can ask the client to consider the possibility of, what if you weren't there? What would have happened in that situation? Just consider it.
Right.
And they can begin to recognize the importance of them being there, the importance of the role that they play, that their life has, not only to, them, but to their parents, to their friends, to their community. You know, one simple thing that a person might have done could have a ripple effect that affects hundreds or thousands of people. And it could be as simple as a kind word to a stranger. And when you do age regression and you go back and you recognize the phenomenal things you've done, and I think this is a problem for most of us, we don't give ourselves enough credit. We don't celebrate what we've accomplished because we think it's ego. You know, I won a gold medal in a race. Oh, it's not a big deal. You know, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. I think it's in the delivery.
Yeah.
As well. Like, I mean, there are some people who take those achievements that they've made in their lives and they, you know, ego becomes egotistical.
Exactly.
So, you know, there is that fine line.
Right.
But then there's this piece where, you know, you're allowed to celebrate, you know, the wonderful things that you've done in this life.
Right.
You know, that would be like, you know, I sit here and, yeah, it's a new show that we're doing, and the Chakra House of Healing is what, like in its 4th or 5th month now, and, you know, we're getting the word out there, you know, about, you know, what all of these wonderful holistic healers are doing. So should I just sit here and go, yeah, maybe I played a part in that, I don't know.
Yeah, well, exactly. And, you know, I'm sure you have a lot of very similar things in your past, in your distant past, that you look back and you think, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal, you know. Going back into the situation, we kind of remember these things with our current filters. But going back into the situation and remembering the challenges you actually lived through, that you had to overcome in order to make this thing possible, helps you to have a new appreciation of yourself. And it's not at the level of the intellect, it's at the level of the emotion, which is what we really need in order to make things happen.
And it's so funny because we sit here and we want to achieve something in our lives that has meaning, and yet when we do achieve it,
we diminish it.
We either diminish it, or we make it like so big where people are going, yeah, okay, whatever.
Or we go like, that person did it better than I did, you know, as if, but you're a part of the whole.
Right.
You're constantly contributing, and maybe that person who did do it better than you could not have done it better than you if they didn't see that you took the initiative.
Right.
Who knows? The point remains, it will be in our best interest as an individual, but also in our families, etc., for us to celebrate ourselves, to honor what we've accomplished, to forgive ourselves.
Forgiveness is huge. I feel like that's part of one of my gifts this lifetime, is just to really work on forgiveness with people.
And you've had to do a lot of that in your life, right?
And I'm helping so many other people do it.
Right.
So it's fantastic.
And you've recognized the challenges that come with that type of work of doing forgiveness. So you understand when someone sits in your chair and says, I
will never forgive them. And then four sessions later, we're doing the forgiveness,
there
right?
You go.
So, and then they feel so much better.
Right. And you know, and you share that. So this is that vibration you have inside of yourself where you have this knowledge at a deep level, let's call it a soul level, and that person is picking that up each time they're sitting there with you. So it's as if they are beginning to very slowly, but most surely, resonate with that frequency of how good it feels to forgive.
And on that note of forgiveness, we're going to have to bring this to a close yet again.
Yeah,
I think you and I need a show that's like, I don't know, 24 hours long or something.
You know, I can
like
talk
that.
for a very long time.
So anyways, thanks again.
My pleasure.
For coming out. And thanks for joining us on the Chakra House of Healing. You know how to reach me, www.The Chakra House of Healing. Please subscribe to the channel. Remember to do that. And we're on Vimeo and on the Big Book of Beauty. So thanks again. See you soon. Have a great night.